Hey guys, so today we're going to talk a little bit about something that it makes me a little bit, it made me happy, and it's also a nice opportunity for me to kind of go and say that I did say this. So let's get into it. Why am I so cryptic? Well, for this to make any sense, I need to give you a little bit of context. Just yesterday I was flattered to be called over by one of my more junior coworkers to have a bit of a technical discussion on a feature that he's working on. And basically the idea of the story that he was working on had to do with the way that we can combine several applications or several versions of the same application, or let's just call it a very similar application structure, into one single application. Instead of having parallel applications that you build for each consumer, you have one single one where you at runtime figure out which version you're going to run. So if you are serving up the content to client A, it's going to be client A's configurations and like how that all works, and client B and client C, and so on and so on and so on. And yeah, let's just call that, as with an umbrella term, feature toggling. So you have different features and different requirements for each of them. Now, what's interesting here is that in order for this to work, we have to have a little bit of a rethink on the way that the application is structured. Now, I know this, but he was struggling a little bit with this, so he wanted to get some advice. And so we started talking, and then he asked, well, Frederick, so I want to be able now to tell my code somehow that, all right, it's a React application. I need to tell React somehow that, well, we're running in that market or that market and this market and so forth. But how do I do that? And I say, well, the fundamental thing we need to ask now is, all right, how do you communicate to a client-side application such as React? Anything. And he says, well, usually we use something like Ajax. And I said, yeah, in theory you could do that. You could bootstrap the application and you could make an Ajax call to the server, and the server can simply respond and say, hey, you are running on this application structure, or you're running in this environment. That's one approach, and I would say that there's nothing really wrong with that, but there are a few others. Another approach is to maybe have a look at, all right, maybe you have a different URL for where you are when you're running. Maybe if you're running in different countries, you can actually grab the URL of the page and just have a look and see like which environment you are, or if you can infer it from that. And he says, yeah, but that makes it hard for local development because we want to be able to change the environment as well. And I say, yeah, that's absolutely feasible. And then there's one more approach which you can use, which is to simply set a global variable at runtime, or rather, you can set up a global variable on the window object, for example, where it just tells you where you are. And he goes, yeah, I like that idea. And I said, yeah, awesome. All you need to kind of do here is to, well, virtually configure Webpack to do some server-side rendering and simply render in the market or like the client that you want to build for. And that way you will be left with a single entry point in the JavaScript, but you will have multiple HTML files, because the HTML file doesn't really we don't have to have any type of real server-side rendering to support this, because there's no dynamic content. It's just a label that we want to put in the page, and that is a perfect fit for just having a static file that at build time or at Webpack's compile time simply gets spitted out with that static stuff. And he kind of goes, okay, could we maybe pair program for this? And I kind of go, yeah, sure, so of course we can pair program. And at first I thought it was slightly odd, but it's fine. We'll just sit down together. And so we sat down together, we walked through it, we had a great time, like debugged some issues and so forth. And then we finally arrive at that magical moment where we actually have to do the rendering. And I noticed that he has no idea how rendering works. He's never done it. He doesn't he struggled with he didn't understand like the templating language where you inject like certain labels that will be replaced by the values of the keys that you provide to the renderer, and that was something completely new for him. And it made me realize that this phenomenon that I have been talking about, where you have people with more junior profiles, and we kind of spoke about this as well. I mean, he learned most of this from me quite quickly. It's not that much, it's not that complicated if you have someone who teaches you how it works. But he has literally worked so exclusively with SPA frameworks that when he was kind of asked to do something that is almost part of everyday life as a developer, he couldn't really do it because SPA frameworks don't work that way. And I mean, it's absolutely understandable that you don't know about it, but it's also one of the things that I've been saying to you guys, that you should have a basic understanding of rendering, because it is still considered to be part of the domain of, say, in this case he's a front-end developer. It's still in that domain, still the same thing. Just creating a HTML page, being able to understand the different ways that you create an HTML page is part of your world. And so after trying this out, he actually had, you know, we were talking and he said that this is great. Now he kind of understands how he has a new tool to his tool suite, because this sort of, as I said, this sort of issue is a perfect fit to solve through server-side rendering. So what I want you to take away from this, guys, is that there are certain things that you may, don't get it into your mind that everything that you do as a front-end developer has only to do with React, Angular, Vue, and that every single problem that you have is going to fit into that domain. In this case, this person was asked to solve a problem using Webpack. Is Webpack front-end technology? Is it? Is it not? I leave that up to you to decide, but all I can say from my experience, when somebody wants you to solve a problem, it doesn't really matter if, it doesn't really matter what you think, they're going to ask you to solve that problem. And I think it's valuable for you to have that mindset that you have to not think just about the SPA frameworks that you're using today. You have to understand the platform. Have a great day.